Welcome back, everybody. The History Guy here. This is episode 7, I believe, of playing through as the nation of Brazil in Hearts of Iron 4 as an Axis power. I'm a fascist nation. And where we last left off, we had mostly conquered Mexico and have crossed the Rio Grande into the southern part of Texas in our invasion of the United States in a desperate bid to relieve some of the pressure off of my Axis buddies over in Europe where things are not going nearly as well. So right now my biggest problem is steel. I can't get enough of it because I'm just not able to trade overseas without it being kind of interrupted. So it's an ongoing problem not having enough steel, but otherwise things are going fairly well. Looks like I need a little bit more oil, but oil is easy to come by because I can get that from Venezuela. In fact, we're going to cancel getting it from Peru and just get it all from Venezuela, make things nice and easy. Steel is a different story. I'm trying to get it from all kinds of different places, none of which are easy. So we'll just see how that goes. We're going to go ahead and continue on. It's October of 1942, and I've got at least a little pocket of allies surrounded here. We'll just kind of follow along with what happens for just a little while. Looking at my research, I do have Light Cruiser 2 coming up, as well as Backhand Blow, which is my next land doctrine that I've been researching. So once those two are done and I go ahead and choose a subsequent research, we'll go ahead and drop out and come back in as situation warrants. Looks like I need to reissue my invasion orders. There we go. Get them moving again. So hopefully as I press up in, I'm going to basically kind of establish a beachhead, so to speak, in the southern United States. Once I get about as far as San Diego, maybe even up to Los Angeles, I'm basically just going to hold the line and start pushing toward the east. Get those factories, take his capital, see how quickly I can maybe push him to the brink of being out of the war. Because I know the United States, their national unity is not real high. If we look right here, it'll give us kind of a clue on that. It says when they will capitulate when their victory points are at 45% or less, which means their national unity must be pretty low already to allow that to happen. Mexico has finally capitulated. That's really doesn't matter a whole lot, I guess. Let's go ahead and get Backhand Blow finished, and then we'll pick a couple of research threads here. All right. We're going to keep things going on the land doctrine as long as possible. I do want to look at infantry. We need to start moving up to infantry weapons. We can go all the way up to weapons 3 now because we're in 1942, so I really probably should have been doing that sooner because I got so many infantry units in the field. But there we have it. Just looking at the current situation, fielded manpower in my side on the war, 10.4 million. His somewhere between 6 and 7.5. My casualties are finally starting to climb a little bit. I'm up to 461,000. Most of those have happened since I invaded Mexico. All right, we'll come back when things get a little more interesting. All right, so we just finished up Maintenance Company 1, so we're going to go ahead and start getting some maintenance companies into my units. We're going to upgrade our field hospitals. I'm going to pause for just a second here. We're currently working on Fighter 3, Field Hospital 2, nuclear reactor still a year away, improved infantry equipment. And so let's go ahead and take a look real quick at, I'm not so much worried about infantry as I am my armored divisions. Let's get maintenance companies in there, as well as my motorized divisions. And just showing what maintenance companies do. They basically help with reliability and a little bit with hit points, but it's mostly about reliability for my mechanized, motorized, armor, etc. So that'll help a little bit with that. So I'm currently at 124 factories, and we should expect to see that continue to rise as I move further into the United States. I just surrounded and destroyed a pocket of American divisions here. I think there are only 2 of them. But you can see I've now taken over most of Mexico with the exception of the Baja Peninsula here. But we're going to go ahead and move into Arizona, Southern California, start moving east, be able to take New Orleans, Mobile, and into Florida, and then we'll kind of start pressing toward Atlanta, Nashville, Little Rock, St. Louis, and then into places like Chicago, Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, and then finally on to D.C. Okay, so national focus complete, submarine effort. Really, at this point, I'm just kind of filling in whatever's available here. We're going to go destroyer effort next. And just to kind of review where things stand, I've taken all of Texas, starting to move into New Mexico. Well, I got a little piece of Texas right there. Starting to move into most of New Mexico, southern Arizona, about to cross over into California. Also got a little bit of Oklahoma here. So we're about to start moving into Louisiana. So moving quite nicely. As soon as I kind of fill in these last couple of gaps here, I'm just gonna change the orders just to push on the eastern part of the country. I'm just keeping an eye out. No threats of invasions at the moment happening over here. And just to kind of review where things stand here, very little has changed. It's still basically a static kind of push and pull situation over here in Europe. Looking at Germany, they're about half toward capitulation. But overall, it's saying the war's going 7% in favor of the aggressors, which is about as good as it's been for a little while. It looks like Germany's starting to push a little bit back into the Soviet Union. And I think part of that is because Japan is doing so well over here on the other side. They're kind of pushing through there. So, kind of wish that Japan would focus less on the Soviet Union and more on the Pacific and focus on the United States. If they could open up a second front by landing on the West Coast, would be really helpful to me. But for the moment, that's not happening. So we've got a while before any other research comes about. So we'll continue to sim and see what happens. Well, here's an interesting development. It's December 13th, 1942, and the Netherlands has capitulated. Benito Mussolini has announced that the cowardly Dutch nation could no longer withstand the pressure from the overwhelming presence of Italian forces throughout the country. The Dutch government has chosen to flee the country and has gone into exile. Now, I don't know that that necessarily means a whole lot in the grand scheme of things, but it does mean that at least something good has happened for the Axis over here in Europe. Now, you can see it looks like, I guess this was probably the territory that was owned by the Netherlands, and it's become Axis now. We do have some troops over there, but they're cut off from the rest, so at some point I would like to see, hopefully they can connect each other there. But things are looking up a little bit. Maybe my little foray into the United States is helping. Now, I've been asked on some of the previous videos, well, why isn't the United States pouring divisions into this fight to stop you? Well, let's take a look, because they have somewhere, we don't know exactly how many because of intelligence, but they've got somewhere between 97 and 174 divisions total in their armed forces. Now, if you compare that against other nations, I've got 100. So it may be that I have almost as large an army as the United States at this point. And you figure that all of mine is basically concentrated in this one fight, where theirs is spread out. They've got some fighting over here in Europe. They've got a couple of fronts in Europe, the Southeast Europe, the western part of Europe, and then, of course, trying to defend against me in the United States. I just don't think they have the manpower, though you would think with as many factories as they have that they'd be able to just pump out divisions rapidly, because they've got at least 3 times the factories that I do. But slowly but surely I'm starting to overrun some of those, so we'll see what happens. You can see now I've moved into Louisiana. I haven't taken New Orleans yet, but I've taken most of the rest of the state. We're into Arkansas, about to cross the Mississippi River, and a couple more territories to take, and we'll fill out the orders that I've currently given them. So probably by the first of the year, we'll be ready to issue that next set of orders, which is going to be the push into the eastern part of the United States. We're going to go for victory points, try and knock them out of the war if we can. Happy 1943, everybody. New Orleans is about to fall. There's a pocket of resistance here in southern Louisiana, an unknown number of divisions that we haven't started going after yet. But we are pressing ahead into Mississippi and Alabama. We've pushed things north, and lo and behold, just looking at the state of the war, it is now 32% in favor of the aggressors. That would be us. Things are going well. It looks like Germany has kind of stabilized things a little bit. Italy, nationalist Spain is still kind of just barely hanging on with a sliver of their nation here, but it looks like Germany's pushed back into Poland, and they've kind of kept things stable here. It looks like, boy, the Allies are knocking on the door of Berlin again, and it doesn't look like Germany's got a lot to stop them, so I don't know what's going to happen there. That whole thing's just a mess, and it doesn't seem to be going one way or the other too far. So we'll see what happens. We're going to go ahead here. I think we're just about to the place now where I can go ahead and change my strategy up a little bit as far as what the plans are. We're going to go ahead and draw the new offensive line, and it's going to be, we're going to go after Detroit, and of course Ohio, Pennsylvania. We've got Philadelphia, Washington, all the kind of the industrial heartland. So we're going to see how that goes, and we're going to launch that invasion now. Well, we'll just kind of hold our own over here on the west. You can see I'm up to 136 factories. I expect that number is going to continue to climb as I push into the eastern part of the country. Still nothing happening down here. No real threat of invasion. Just not a lot going on elsewhere. But things are really starting to look up. It's at 34% now. And I think a lot of that's happening because I'm pushing the United States toward capitulation, hopefully, in the next year or so. My casualties, let's see where they're at. I'm up to 525,000 now, but the U.S. is up over 1.25 million now. All right, so there's improved infantry equipment. So we're going to continue down that road. We're going to go to Weapons 2, which of course will mean everybody's going to need an upgrade. And that's totally fine, giving my troops the best possible weapons in the field is always a good thing. There's Fighter 3, so there's another upgrade that's going to have to take place. We'll have to start changing those things over. You know what? Let's start looking at bombers. Kind of expand our reach as far as what we're doing with the air power. So we're going to switch all these over to Fighter 3. We're going to start upgrading those fighters. We've got 300 of them to upgrade. I got to check while I'm at it with my fighters. I got to start covering some more ground here. But I'm going to need a new airfield to do that. So it looks like we'll need to... Oh, I don't own that one. So we've got to overrun a couple of these airfields in order to be able to... Oh, I don't have that one yet either. So once I overrun those airfields, there we go. We can move some of these fighters and start covering some more ground, or air, as it were. So we'll get them all moved up there, and we'll start getting some air superiority in some more regions. All right. All right, national focus continues here. We just got destroyer effort completed. And we'll just look for the next, how about special forces? Let's go ahead and do that now. I've overrun the oil fields in the Gulf region here, and that allowed me to cancel any of my trade orders for oil. I no longer need them. Here we go. As you can see, I am importing, or I am producing more than enough oil on my own now that I don't need to get it from anywhere else. You can look right here. I got 66 in Louisiana, 80 in Oklahoma, 42 in Kansas, 464 in Texas. So lots and lots of good things happening because of me overrunning the United States. Now, I've also got more factories. I'm up to 170 factories as I continue to push west and overrun his factories. So we're at the place now where we can start looking at what else we want to build. I'm going to be able to produce bombers pretty soon, but right now what I really need is to be able to produce more motorized and light tanks. So let's go light tank for now. So we'll start queuing some of those up. We'll slow down the medium tanks and the motorized in favor of that. Now, obviously, again, trade is an issue for me right now. it's really all about steel and not getting enough of it. So we just got to keep trying to trade from different places. If I import a little too much, that's totally fine, because it's getting cut off from different places at different times. So let's take a look here. We are really pushing up ahead. We're up into Nebraska. I've got the eastern part of Colorado now, almost all of Kansas, part of Missouri, overrun Arkansas. We're starting to push into Tennessee. I'll take Nashville pretty soon. St. Louis is going to fall. We're inching towards Chicago and Detroit. It's going to get interesting here pretty soon. The war is currently showing 34% in favor of the aggressors. That'd be me. Again, things have definitely turned a corner for the Eastern Front for Germany against the Soviets, but not a lot changed elsewhere. Okay, so there's Field Hospital 2, so that'll help a little bit. That's something that'll automatically upgrade in all of my units. Let's go ahead and take a look here and see what else we might consider. Air Doctrine's probably a good thing. I want to look at engineering again. Oh, hey, here we go. We could go with rocket engines. But I think maybe I want to be able to get some more intel on things. So we're going to go with this one to get some more decryption. So we're going to have a little bit better understanding of what's going on with my opponents. And let's see. It looks like we're about to overrun Nashville right there. Just kind of take a look at things here as we get toward the end of February 1943. And it now stands at only 26% in favor of the aggressors. That means that something has gone badly somewhere else, and I'm guessing that somewhere else is in Europe. So we'll have to see what's going on here. Yeah, it's probably just this change in what's happening here. It looks like they've maybe overrun part of this area of Germany, the northwest of Berlin, and they are pushing their way back toward Berlin. So it kind of ebbs and flows constantly over there. I guess that's just the way it's going to be. Looking at casualties now, I have now lost almost 600,000. The U.S. is up to 1.4 million. You can see where things stand combined. The difference is the fielded manpower from my side seems to be pretty static at right around 10.6, 10.7 million. His is starting to go down. The low number is at 5.3 million. So it seems to me that maybe the Allied powers are starting to run out of steam when it comes to their available manpower. I would guess that's probably especially true for the UK. So let's take a look here. We've got some more free factories. My goodness. I am now up to 185 factories. That probably puts me as the #1 industrial power in the Axis. Let's see. Nope, Germany's still got more. They've got 232, but I'm close behind with 198 now. Of course, Japan's down there at 117, so we're starting to kind of take a chunk out of the U.S. and their ability to wage war. Start overrunning some of these big cities, and we'll see if we can't get them on the brink of defeat. So we're into April now, and I just thought I'd give you kind of a look at where things stand. If I back out far enough, you can kind of see what Germany controls. And this here is under the control of the Netherlands still, which is interesting since they don't exist at the moment, or at least they've capitulated. But over here in the United States, you can see I'm very, very close to cities such as Chicago, moving up toward Minneapolis. I've taken most of Iowa now. We're working our way toward Ohio. We're almost into, looks like Atlanta has fallen, or is about to. And we're about to hit the Atlantic Ocean. So things are getting really interesting here. He's making a little headway on me in the west. I'm probably going to need to move some more divisions up to kind of deal with that. Just to kind of show you where things stand, 39% in favor of the aggressors, that being the Axis powers. I have 205 factories now, which puts me very, very close. In fact, now it's saying that I actually have more than Germany. So I am now the #1 industrial power in the Axis powers. Maybe in the world, depending on how many the U.S. has left at this point. I may be the top industrial power in the world now. with what I control. So, okay, we've got a naval invasion happening here in the northern part of the country where they tried to land before. So I'm going to go in, kind of deal with this here a little bit. I've got some garrison units there, and it looks like so far they're holding on. But we're probably going to need to shore that up a little bit. So I'm going to actually rush a couple of these infantry units into the field. And we're going to go ahead and assign all of them to this command so that he can put them where he needs to. I can do the same with these infantry units, it looks like. And we'll do the same thing. We're just going to rush some additional units to his support. That should help shore things up against that invasion. And then just looking ahead here, about 3 weeks away from modern Blitzkrieg, and then of course we're going to get our first bombers, which are 1938 bombers. They're not really saying much, but we'll start getting up there. Once we get some decent bombers that we can put into the field, we'll start using those. Although I may not need them at that point. So we'll see what happens here. Okay, May 1st, 1943, modern Blitzkrieg has finished. And we have actually completed our land doctrine tree. We're going to go ahead and start focusing on naval doctrine. I am going to have a naval power at some point. Once I've kind of taken the United States, I'll start focusing on naval power. And that'll protect my shores a little better. So you can see he's trying to land over here now. He did get a beachhead up here in Venezuela, which I'm trying to shore up and push him off of. I'm honestly kind of surprised that the United States would be attempting a landing on the northern part of South America when he's losing his own country. But that's where things stand. We have overrun Atlanta. We're starting to inch up towards Chicago. Things are going really, really well right now, at least for me. Not for the rest of Europe. Germany is kind of starting to lose again, although Italy's doing okay. You can see they're starting, the Soviet Union is once again pushing back toward Germany. So it just constantly ebbing and flowing, and not a lot changing really for the long-term outlook on what's happening there. Alright, so there's some bad news. It's May 13th, 1943, and nationalist Spain has capitulated. So that's one fewer ally that I have on my side. It looks like the Canadians now control a good portion of Spain, and the Brits control the rest. But the war goes on. Germany's still kind of just hanging on as best they can. Things are looking much, much better for me, though. But I am running into a bit of an issue as I get closer and closer to places like Milwaukee and Chicago. So just taking a look at where things stand here. Germany's lost 7 million in this war now. I've lost 719,000 now. The U.S. has lost about 1.5 million, and they are now down to about halfway toward capitulation. We just got to push through and take a couple of these big point cities, and we'll be there. I've got him kind of contained right here. He doesn't look like he's attempting to move any further than that, and that's fine by me. So we'll just keep one eye on what's happening in Europe, and we'll kind of continue to push things up here. I'm going to have to get some more units up into here because this front has gotten so large now that I just don't have the units to kind of push through anywhere really well. Okay, there's going to be a big upgrade here. Infantry Equipment 2, which means now that I have to start upgrading everything. So we're not only producing what we need to replace units in the field, we also need to upgrade what is already there. So, okay, we can go to Improved Infantry Equipment 2 and then Weapons 3 after that. So we won't even get everybody replaced with the Weapons 2 before we make the next step. Vichy France canceled their Lend-Lease. That's fine, whatever. What's this here? Call to arms. No, I'm not getting into the war with the Soviets. I have one war, and that's plenty for me. So we are able to make our first bombers, though I have no intention of building any of these tactical bombers, these pre-war bombers. We're going to start looking at, I think I want tactical, so I want them to be able to help me in the field with the enemy combatants. So that we're going to go that route versus strategic, which would be more about hitting his cities and his ability to make war. All right. Getting closer and closer to Chicago. Things will get a little easier once we hit some of these shorelines, because then we won't have quite so much ground to cover. But he doesn't really have that much in the way of divisions to hold me at this point. I don't know how many for sure he's got, but it's somewhere between 135 268. And I definitely, it looks like the UK now has the most in terms of factories, which is kind of interesting. They're right up there with the US, maybe a few less. The war now is back down to 9% in favor of the aggressors, and that completely reflects what's happening in Europe. Germany's starting to kind of lose it again. It looks like Italy is pushing back and restoring Yugoslavia to its rightful place in the world. So not a lot happening in the west. Most of the action for me right now is over here in the east, where I'm pushing toward that battle line that I've drawn. We'll try to take this episode up at least until I can take Chicago and maybe Detroit and see where things stand from there. Okay, so there's decryption frequency analysis. I'm hoping that with continued research into decryption, I can start to have a better sense of what's happening on the other side of the battle lines, because I still can't even see things like how many divisions he's got that I'm up against. But I can see that I'm very, very close to taking Chicago. And that's some pretty good news, because the war is just about back to stalemate status, which is really frustrating, because we were all the way up to 30-some%. And I was starting to feel like things were going really well as far as my chances in this war. So we're into June of 1943 now. I'm really hoping I can at least get Chicago in the next month or two. Just depends on how fast we can move up there. I did add a couple of new units that I actually am going to need to issue new orders in order to get them. So let's go ahead and redraw the offensive line. Just on the other side of Philly for now. And then we'll worry about New York after that. So we got a bunch more units we're going to start pushing up there with. Yeah, let's at least finish off Florida here, guys, before you guys go moving up there. Okay, there we go. Getting really, really close to Chicago here. Alright, we're just about to the end of June 1943, and I think I'm going to go ahead and create a third army for the Western Theater, kind of the Pacific here. And we'll actually call them the Pacific Theater. And their job is basically going to be to push this line here. I guess I got to redo that just because of the units involved. We're just going to push this line right up there. Of course, they don't have the units right now, but they'll get them into position. And we'll let them push that up. We'll take all of California. We're very, very close to Chicago here. Just not a lot of units on the front is the main issue right now. Wait, why are these guys all shifting that way? Okay, we've got to... Let me kind of clean this up. I got to shorten the front line and deal with all of that, and then we'll be good to go. Okay, I think I've got all that cleaned up properly now. And we won't have all of these units shifting back in the other direction. We'll start shifting them over to the east. See if we can't push this thing to a completion here. Because the war's basically back to a stalemate at this point. It's back to 2% in my favor, which is pretty much nothing. You can see his fielded manpower has gone up. Mine's going down. I think my Axis brethren in Europe are starting to run out of steam themselves. So we'll keep an eye out on this for just a minute while we watch the push towards Chicago. And I think things are okay down in South America. Yeah, not really much going on there. Maybe a little bit before we take Chicago yet. Some of these units have to get into position, but we're going to start moving in on Southern California as well. All right, so Berlin has fallen to the Allies once again. That's a big part of why the war's back to a stalemate. But Chicago is about to fall to me in the next day here. And that should definitely put a little bit of a hole in the U.S.'s plans to continue as a nation. I'm also curious to see what it does to my number of factories. Yep, there were 13 of them there, so we're up to 242 now. And that means I've got, once again, some free factories. About to hit Columbus. Looks like we just took Charlotte. And so next up, we're going to hit Detroit, Cleveland, Columbus, Pittsburgh, Washington, Philadelphia, and then on to New York. And I have to wonder if at that point that's enough for the war to be over, because he's already at 71% toward capitulation. So we've got to figure out what to do with these extra factories. My real problem right now is that I just don't have the goods to be able to produce all this stuff. But we'll just put it into artillery for now. Well, no, because we don't need that much artillery. Let's go support equipment. All right, I think we should be good there for now. And all right, let's go ahead and take this the next step. See if we can't finish him off here, even as Europe starts to hopelessly fall to the Allies, which means they're all going to turn their attention on me. Yay me. All right, so Columbus and Detroit are about to fall, and I think that'll be a good place to kind of stop for this episode. We'll be right on the verge of knocking the U.S. out of this thing. I'm trying to ignore this battle in favor of pushing through to Detroit there. But Columbus is about to fall here. Cincinnati has fallen. And we will be knocking on the door of places like, we've got Norfolk over here. There's a big naval base. We've got Washington. I think Detroit has fallen. So let's see what that does to the state of things. What is the National Union of Greece? Oh, interesting. So as soon as this is done with its save here. All right, U.S. is now at 56% of the victory points, 55%. And as soon as it goes down another 10%, they will capitulate. So Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Washington may just about be enough to do that. So I tell you what, we're getting real close to where I live. I live right over in here, so let's kind of see what's happening, just kind of get the big picture. We also, at the same time, are about to take Los Angeles, so that certainly, all of those things combined should be enough to knock the U.S. out of this war. So maybe we'll wait just a minute and see what happens with that. Of course, things are still just barely on my side of things. Problem is now we're up to, on my side, 16.5 million casualties. I'm closing in on 1 million now myself, and I've still got 2 million in manpower, and I can change my conscription law and probably double the amount. I'll get another 3 or 4 million that way, and that should last me for a while, at least till I get nukes. And once again, we've got more factories than we know what to do with. So I'll probably have some things I'll need to kind of look through and clean up a little bit as things go along here. You know what? Let's go ahead and start making some bombers. Even though they're not the best bombers right now, eventually I'll be able to produce something that's a little more effective. Alright, what's happening here? Dangerous naval invasion. Yeah, nothing I got to worry about. It doesn't appear. More military factors. My goodness, I must have just overrun something big. Let's take a look at what. It's probably L.A. Yep, I took Los Angeles. So now I'm up to 274. So I've got to really kind of look over some things. We're really super close. We're 92% of the way toward the end of the war for the United States. Really just need one more big city. I don't know if Cleveland and Pittsburgh will be enough or if we're going to need to take Washington as well. But it's probably worth sticking around to see what happens with that. So let me go ahead and clean some things up and come right back. We're into September 1943. Cleveland's about to fall. And we are making this final push on the industrial might of the Northeast in the United States. We'll see what happens when Cleveland falls, where that puts us. I'm pretty much out of national focuses now. I've done just about everything I can. So we're going to pause for a second here because really there's very little left that I can do. We can focus on cruiser effort and capital ship effort on the naval end of things. There goes Cleveland. And let's see what's happening here. How's the United States justifying against me? We're already at war. Okay, well, taking a look at this, where they stand now, they're at 96% toward capitulation. I only need to knock them down another 2%. They're at 47. They got to be at 45 or less. So Pittsburgh might do it. If not, we know Washington will. I think we've kind of hit a standstill at the moment in the West after taking Los Angeles. We could kind of make a push here towards San Francisco, and maybe that would do the trick. But I don't know how easy that'll be. But I want to kind of stick with this now as we watch the attack on Pittsburgh, because I want to see if that does it, and that's what pushes the U.S. over the edge. I never thought in a million years I'd actually be able to push them to capitulation, but seems that's where we are. All right, so 87%. And it's saying what? Let's see, another 2 days, and we'll be there. All right, we're on the border of Pennsylvania. Just got to take Ashtabula up here in Ohio. Come on, Pittsburgh. Let's be the one that does it. There it is. Let's see what happens. There it is. I think we did it. The United States has capitulated. Plinio Salgado has announced that the cowardly American nation could no longer withstand the pressure from the overwhelming presence of Brazilian forces throughout the country. The American government has chosen to flee the country and has gone into exile. Their main forces have capitulated. The integralist Brazil is now in control of their home area. Though the war against what remains of the Allies continues elsewhere, this is a great victory for all of the Axis. I just grabbed myself 1,000 M3 Stuarts. That's kind of nice. All right, we're going to stop right there. That's a great place to stop. I've now got 339 factories. The U.S. is out of the war. So I've got a lot of decisions to make here. I could kind of push up into Canada if I so choose. But it's going to be a few days before I get back to this, so I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know, what do you think I should do next? The U.S. is out of the war. Obviously, Canada is about the only place I can go before I start looking to Europe. And before I can do anything to help out my friends in Europe, I've got to have some more naval power. So I'm going to have to look at these dockyards and see what I can come up with to start putting together a navy. Maybe I can do something to turn the tide in Europe. But for now, we'll stop right there. I welcome your observations, your comments, your questions, your criticisms, any and all those things. If you'd hit that thumbs up, I would greatly appreciate it. Check out some of my other videos. We'll see you in a few days with the next episode.